Go ahead.
Coming at you live for November. I'm just kidding. I feel like a news reporter up here. So, do y'all want to get started, or I got a few more seconds. This is what I do in my class. Watch and wait for it on the dot. I'll go ahead and get started because I'm going to start off by introducing myself anyway. So I'm Dr. Jennifer Mann. I am a psychology faculty member here at Navarro College. I'm the psychology department chair, and I've been here for I think 8 years, not 8 years now, I believe. But I have a PhD in educational psychology, and I tell you that so you know a little bit about my education is in this background. I have a background in this. I'm also a licensed school psychologist, and so I practiced school psychology at Corsicana ISD for a little over a decade and loved it, absolutely loved working with students with disabilities or emotional behavioral disorders, anything of that type. But it's a hard job, right? So it's tough. So I came to Navarro College where everything's sunshine and rainbows and super easy. So bear with me. I love talking about this. I've told some people before, I love talking about this subject. I love talking with other people who are experiencing some of these things. And so please feel free to stop and ask questions. If you have a specific situation that you want to talk to me about, we can talk after. You can email me. I'll have my contact information at the end or what have you, because I get passionate. With that said, I am going to use a PowerPoint because I will branch off, and you can ask my students. I'll go off on a tangent and talk about it the whole class if given half a chance. So let's get started, all right? First, I just want y'all to think, because I'm pretty sure most of you either know or have had a student in your classroom who maybe struggles with communication. Maybe they don't speak, right? We all have students that don't speak. Or maybe they speak, I don't want to say too much, but they speak a lot. They conversate with you during your class as if you and them were the only two in that classroom. They may be the one that answers all the questions. And so I want you to just think about that student with those communication differences. They may turn in excellent written work, but struggle following instructions and ask you multiple times some of the same questions because the instructions are tripping them up a little bit. They also may seem overwhelmed by group projects, those social interactions with other students. If they seem to have trouble with that, or in group projects, they get mad because they're uncomfortable having to work in groups or work with other people. Now, we've got a lot of students that feel that way, right? I think most of my students are like, group work, and they just groan when they hear stuff like that. And then also, maybe you have a student that has exhibited unique behaviors that you don't typically see in your classes. Maybe they rock, or they get excited and maybe do a little bit of flapping, maybe some tapping, bouncing their leg. Some people in here probably bounce their leg. There's nothing wrong with that, but sometimes it can distract you or other students in the room. So thinking about that student is kind of what we're going to be talking about today. So a lot of times we see neurodivergence, right? This has gotten to be a more popular word. So I chose, originally we were going to talk about specifically autism spectrum disorders in the classroom, but we decided to broaden it a little bit to just make it neurodiversity, because we're seeing a lot more students that have ADHD, autism, and some different learning differences and sensory differences and things like that. But a lot of the strategies are the same. So I thought we could just broaden that topic a little bit. So that's why we're talking about neurodiversity. And what it is just natural differences between learning, how brains think and process information, and those types of things. So the point, though, is that neurodiversity emphasizes different cognitive styles, how their brain is working, not just deficits. And so I want to point that out because I want us to not think of these things as deficits or problems, but rather just as a unique characteristic that some of these students have. Some examples, this is what I was talking about a while ago, will autism spectrum disorder, or ASD, or some people just say autism. I will probably say autism more than autism spectrum disorders or ASD, but it's all under the autism spectrum umbrella. Or ADHD, y'all probably have heard of that, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. I will just call it ADHD because it's much easier. I didn't even type it. That's how much I don't say the whole word. And then I just mentioned learning differences and processing differences and sensory sensitivities. And so those a lot of times include, along with autism and ADHD, executive dysfunction. So we're going to talk about executive functioning here in just a minute, but I wanted to point that out. Y'all may have heard it and may not know what it is. You may all know exactly what it is, but we're going to look at that as well. I don't know what he's doing.
We're having some problems showing the PowerPoint on the live stream. I'm trying to fix that.
Oh, no worries. No, well, look, I've got notes. I can keep talking. You want me to keep talking?
No, you got your slide up there now.
Oh, okay. Why does it matter? Well, we are seeing more and more neurodiverse students enrolling in college, so we're seeing them in our classrooms, right? And we're also seeing students who are in our classrooms, but maybe they don't have a diagnosis. They may not even know that some of the differences that they've struggled with their whole lives fall under neurodiversity of one type or another, right? Some students just think it's been really hard for them to learn, or they notice that navigating the systems on campus are harder for them. Being out in public are difficult, those kinds of things. And so you may notice it in your class, but you may have students in your class that you don't even realize that's what they're dealing with, okay? So the good news is, and what we're going to talk about the bulk of this, our little time together, is that so with some small adjustments in communication, in structure and clarity, we can help these students and make a big difference in the classroom, okay? All right. So some strengths that are associated with neurodiversity. Sorry, I get so dry mouth. It's important to remember that neurodiversity does come with strengths. Again, it's not just about deficits or difficulties. So some notice details that others overlook. They have this great attention to detail. Sometimes that will drive faculty a little crazy because they will find every error that you have in an assignment, your course calendar, your syllabus, and all that. So, hey, offer extra points. I've told them, I've got a few errors. I want to see if you're reading, see if you can find it, which ended up being a little embarrassing for myself, but I played it off. I was like, look how good you are. Also, they may be very creative and bring a whole other analytical way of thinking about the problems in class. And it's whatever's loose in here is messing with me.
Maybe so.
That's okay. But those are just a couple. Let me know if it's working. So the bottom line, talking about the strengths, is that we're all just people, right, with unique characteristics. I'm sure some of y'all have your own unique characteristics. I know I have my own unique characteristics. You can just ask my students. They probably have a long list they could tell you about Dr. Mann's little idiosyncrasies that she has in class. All right, our goal is to support them, right? So that's what we're going to do. First, I'm going to talk a little bit about some of these categories and give a little information just for people who may not know very much about autism or ADHD. But what we're going to see is I'm going to focus on characteristics that are different between these disorders or categories, but they overlap a lot. So I want y'all to remember that. All right. So you think I can click it?
Let's try it.
It worked. So in autism, it impacts, most of the time, it mainly impacts communication and social interactions. That's not the only characteristics we see, but those are key points that have to be present for a diagnosis of an autism spectrum disorder in the first place. Now, it's a spectrum, so there's a wide range. Probably all of you know this, and you've probably heard, if you've met one person with autism, you've met one person with autism, because it can look vastly different between people on the spectrum. In college, I think we tend to see more similar characteristics because there has to be a certain level of cognitive ability and functioning to be able to be in a college classroom, right? So we don't see, at least I don't, students who might be nonverbal, who don't communicate, who don't have communication. But what I see is communication where it's very literal, or it's very concrete and black and white, right? They don't get when I make jokes, which I do all the time, as you can tell. Another characteristic we see is this restricted and repetitive behaviors is what we call it. This can include just being super focused on a topic that they love, that they want to talk about all the time, and they know everything about it. Don't even try to tell them because you'll be wrong. I guarantee you. I remember, I'm just got to tell you this story. I remember working with a young child, I think he was like 9 or 10, and he could tell you every dinosaur that ever was. He could spell the name correctly, tell you if it was omnivore, herbivore, carnivore. He could do all of that, and I'm like, I know pterodactyl and T-Rex. That's it, you know, I don't know anything. So we talked a lot about dinosaurs, and it was great, right? So reading social cues, that's a lot of times that social interactions. They see somebody laughing, they think they're laughing at them because they don't, maybe they didn't get a joke that somebody said, or they didn't even hear what they're laughing about, but they see people laughing and they may misinterpret that, or they may not, they may be speaking with somebody and not read the body language or the facial expressions like many of us kind of do naturally sometimes. Love and routine, that's a big one. Sensory sensitivities. We have to watch out for those. Bright lights, temperature. Is anybody else in here? Nobody else in here is got one at Drain Hall. If you know, you know. It's either 85 degrees or it's 60 degrees in there. So the temperature's a little, we tell our students, dress in layers because you never know what it's going to be like. And then I wanted to mention on the preference for routine. Remember that snow day we had where we got to stay home? When it throws off your schedule like that, a student who is neurodivergent, that can throw them completely off because now assignments aren't due on the same day, or the lecture's not on the right day, or the exam has gotten bumped. And having that break in routine can really just throw them for a loop a little bit. All right? And then self-regulating behaviors. You may have heard this is called self-stimulation, or stimming behaviors is the most common one. And so you may see this in the classroom. I talked about a little bit the rocking and flapping and things. But I want to make sure you understand that these behaviors help regulate stress for these students. If you are a leg bouncer, that's probably exactly why you do that with your leg, is it can help where you're just bouncing your leg. That's fine, right? A lot of people do that. And it helps you regulate the sensory input that's coming in, or stress, or whatever it might be. And it's the same way with rocking and flapping. It could be excitement, it could be frustration, it can be any of those things. But that's what that is, right? Okay. So the next one I want to talk about is ADHD. Y'all know probably a lot more about this one. This primarily affects executive functioning, such as organization, planning, and attention. They have trouble organizing tasks. There are 3 types of ADHD. A person can be the inattentive type, where they mainly just have trouble focusing and paying attention. They can have the hyperactive type, where they've got a lot of energy, but I think what we see more is the impulsiveness, where they speak out when it's not appropriate, or act in a way that's just not appropriate at that time because they think it and they do it, right? I have that issue myself sometimes. Or it can be combined. They can have both. And we do see a lot of that as well. And when I say we, I mean just in society. Okay? And so with college, you have to think about how difficult these things can be, because a lot of times they've got multiple deadlines. They've got lots of different responsibilities. My son did Navarro College as a dual language program when he was in high school. I'm sorry, y'all, my nose is just going nuts. And he did the dual credit, and he did not do great, much to my chagrin. Is that how you say that word, chagrin? And so the second semester, I was like, look, I'm sitting down with you. We're going to look at Canvas. I'm going to show you how to find where your assignments are. Because every semester, he's 22 now, about to finally graduate from another college. And he's like, oh, we don't have a book. I'm like, I guarantee you have a book. You have something. No, we don't have anything to read. I guarantee you have something somewhere. So I'm like, I'm going to sit down with you. So this was at Navarro College. He had 3 classes. And all 3 classes had different Canvas pages. They had their assignments in different places. One was the to-do list, one was in announcements, one had modules, and so that was different. Well, then they all 3 had different publishers with their textbooks, so that used the learning management systems for that publisher. So it was 3 more programs they had to learn, where their book was, where assignments were. And it hit me then that a lot of students, it's going to be too much. It's going to be overwhelming. So I want y'all to just keep that in mind, of how someone who has difficulty organizing, managing time, remembering instructions about where what is and all of that, all those differences can be really difficult for them. All right. Lastly, when we're talking about ADHD and autism, I want you to know that the symptoms of both of those can really overlap a lot. So I may not have talked about difficulty sustaining attention when I talked about autism, but people with autism can very much have trouble staying focused, or organizing tasks, have trouble with some of these things. So Temple Grandin, if you've ever heard her, has an amazing book that talks about how that overlap looks. It just blew my mind when I saw that. So a little bit more, I wanted to tell y'all this because I found out this is on TikTok. I'm so impressed with myself that I learned this stuff. So they call ADHD and autism, the fact that so much of these symptoms overlap, ADHD. ADHD is what they call it now. And they being just people, not doctors or
people who have it. People who have it.
People who have it, right? Neurodivergent people, they'll call it ADHD. So now y'all know you can be one of the hip kids and know what they're talking about. There we go. The executive functioning, I just want to make sure y'all know how important executive functioning is. It's in a lot of our frontal lobe, which doesn't develop until mid-20s fully. So a lot of the students we have, they're still, that part of their brain is still developing. But, planning, organizing, managing time, those kinds of things, knowing how to start and finish work, right? And so when executive functioning is weaker, students may not know what to do about it. They may not understand. I almost guarantee you they don't understand what executive functioning is, right? And so they just struggle. And so if you've ever had a student or had multiple students or a child who does their work all the time, but they don't turn it in. Like they do it, they just forget. When they get it done, it's done. And it goes out of their brain, off their list of to-do things, and they forget to turn it in. So we can see that with executive dysfunctioning, where those things are not working quite like how we want them to. All right, so what can this look like around campus? We're going to get to the classroom here in just a minute, but I wanted to talk about also just in general around campus. Large or crowded spaces can be a lot more difficult for students. It's not just limited to the classroom. Having to order food in the dining hall or go into the deli and having to make quick decisions can be tricky and stressful. Really, that's kind of what it comes down to, is it can cause the stress that then overstimulates, and then it causes just difficulties in general. Campus environments can have sensory input that's a little overwhelming. Pep rallies, games, a lot of times they may not attend because of that. Social expectations, and then of course complex procedures if they've got to go to financial aid or maybe to get their books and they don't know what that process is, and so they might not even try because it's frustrating and overwhelming to try to navigate some of these areas. Very frequently, tutoring. I'll tell them, go get tutoring. And they're like, I don't know how to do that. And I'll tell them where it is, and I can see them as I go through the multiple steps, I can almost see them start to shudder, which it's much easier now, and they're good. I send students to Debbie Richardson all the time. And so that I get to where they learn where the library is because I send them there. So I really like that it's all in the same place. All right, and so I think we're going to do, in the fall, we're going to do a training that's more on campus, like for staff. So I'm going to kind of segue into the classroom more specifically now. But please feel free to ever email me, call, let me know, and ask questions. Okay, so in the classroom, these were kind of the areas I picked to talk about today with communication. And this isn't just class discussions. This could be just asking for help, or not asking for help maybe, or asking for help all the time with everything. Also interacting with peers, emailing, that can be difficult sometimes. And then assignments, difficulty understanding the instructions, or just anxiety over their grades, or having trouble sitting still while you're doing some type of assignment, that kind of thing. And oh, he's doing it. I think it's me, and it's Cody.
It's technology.
It's technology. All right, go one more, please. Thank you. I'm being demanding. Predictability, which goes back to that routine that I talked about a while ago, and then just behaviors in general that we may see in the classroom. So communication strategies, things you can do to help your students in the classroom, using clear and literal, be very literal with your language. I tell my students day one, I'm going to make a lot of jokes because I actually have a great fear of speaking in front of people. Why I continually choose a career where I speak in front of people, I don't know. I don't know why I do this to myself. They always look at me like, why are you up there? So I tell them I make jokes, and typically they're bad jokes. So just laugh, because then I just feel better. But I have to be aware of what I'm saying, because sometimes I make jokes, and I'll have that one student in my class, and they look at me like, what the heck is she even talking about? That doesn't make sense. So that sarcasm can be tricky for some students as well. Clarifying your expectations. We all know that we're supposed to have all of that. We're supposed to have it printed in our syllabi. We're supposed to have it where we discuss it. Don't just do it once. Don't just have it in one place and never talk about it again. If you've got students that you think are struggling with some of these things in the class, repeat the expectations, right? If you've got children, we have to do this all the time. And then add or use written instructions as well. Anybody here in the room use sticky notes? Yes, I could wallpaper my office, right? I have to have my sticky notes. I need that visual reminder. Well, if you have an in-person class and you give verbal instructions, a lot of students with neurodivergence, they're not retaining all of those instructions. So have written instructions as well. So not only can they reference it later, but when they have a question, you can point to it and go back over it or whatever you need in that point. Okay. So for assignments, some considerations to have. Group projects can be difficult. Most students don't like them, I already said that. One thing you can do is assign groups. Instead of saying, all right, y'all divide up into groups, if you've got those students that you know struggle, or even if you're not, even in general, it's easier for students sometimes to just have those groups assigned. So consider that. But don't bribe the students. I'm telling on a professor right now. I don't know who the professor was, so that's okay. But I have this student, and I've known this student for a long time, and they're on the spectrum, and they are devastated because a professor bribed the class in front of him to work with him on a project. And what I'm sure the professor doesn't know is that this student has dealt with, has struggled with making friends. Even when they have friends, they don't think they have friends. And this has been years that people have worked with him to help him understand how to make friends and that he has friends, but he doesn't think he has any. Now he is 100% stuck on. The teacher even had to bribe the class to work with me. I've heard it 3 times already, and we're not even doing group work in my class. But he talks to me, so that's why. But don't do that. Assign the groups, or if you need to assign seating, even if you do that, pair them up with somebody that you know is maybe a little more compassionate. Somebody who's maybe in education is always a great choice to pair them up with, because they tend to be a little more interested in learning how they can work with somebody who might have some differences like that. Perspective taking and social interpretation tasks can be more difficult with them. For those who've heard of theory of mind, the ability to realize other people have different thoughts than what you have can be delayed in developing in students who are on the spectrum and in students who have ADHD. And so sometimes it's more difficult for them to think what would happen in this scenario if they're not in that scenario. You know what I mean? Does that make sense? So just kind of keeping that in mind. And then what you can do is sometimes have alternatives with some of these strategies that you could do with them, is to have alternative assignments, breaking the tasks into steps, providing examples. Who's had a student say for a paper, do you have an example? I'm like, well, you got to write your paper. But they need that or want that example to show them how to structure things and such like that. So when I talk about having alternatives and extra structure, I have to bring up UDL, Universal Design for Learning. Now, I've done some training in this, and probably some of you have as well, but some of you may not have. I would imagine it's coming eventually anyway. I know you have. So what UDL is just having, the easiest way I think of it is having alternate ways of doing work, of receiving instructions. and getting information. So if you have an online class and so everything's printed, do a video. If you've got an assignment that's got real difficult instructions, you could do a quick video where you explain it. So it's where they can get the written and the verbal together. For doing their assignments, maybe allow a paper and a visual representation, a video of some type. I've started doing that with papers in my class. Man, I get some really cool things. Some of these students, y'all know this, what they can do with technology, it's like watching a movie. They will do a presentation on ADHD or autism, and it's like a movie. Or I've had one student in my abnormal psychology class that did a presentation on ADHD, and he interviewed 2 of his friends who have ADHD, and he compared the differences in their symptoms. It was just cool. It was just cool. It takes me forever to grade, but it's fun. It's interesting, right? So that's part of a big part of UDL is having that multiple methods, and it can help students access the content and instructions. And then having flexible engagement. Now I'm actually going to use Amanda Morrison as an example because I think this is cool. And you can correct me if I'm wrong. Well, she has done, and part of this was to help with cheating, is have finals where she schedules just a short meeting with the student. They come in, they do a verbal final, and it's, I don't know if it's helpful for her or not, but it gives students an alternate way to engage with her. And I just think it's great. It's great to have that with them. I don't know if you like it or not, but...
I did, and it worked really well. It was really accurate.
Oh, good.
It was accurate what their midterm was. I'm going to do the final exam verbal with me. And what I saw in the midterm exam was pretty accurate.
Good. So if you did it, if you're on at home and didn't hear what Professor Morrison said, is that she found it accurate to what they were learning, and it's a good assessment when they would verbally tell her what they'd learned or what was going on in that with their final exams. And it's a great way to do assessment. So anyway, I can go on about that for a long time. All of these things aren't meant to make you feel like you have to redesign everything in your course. That's not it. You can do just a few minor changes that can be helpful, or just add an alternate way of turning something in or doing the assignment, or do a quick video. Studio is so cool. You just literally push record and start talking, and then you get a little video where maybe you give verbal instructions as well. But if you do some of this flexibility in the beginning, then it helps you not have to retrofit for accommodations, because not all the students have accommodations that need them, right? And I know sometimes people feel like it's not fair, so just do it for the whole class. And then you're not having to change something for one student. Just do it for everybody. I'm not talking about extended time, but if they need verbal instructions or something like that, if you do a video and post it for the whole class, then you've got everybody taken care of. So, do any of y'all have any questions about UDL before I move on? Good, because I'm not an expert on it. But it's really interesting. It's really interesting. All right. So, supporting predictability. Provide advance notice of changes in the schedule if you can, right? It's not always possible, but just posting announcements, we're supposed to do that anyway, right? So that can be very helpful. But if you know you have a student in your class that's neurodivergent, tell them that's where you're going to have changes, right? Look at announcements. I tell all my students, do they? No. But at least you're doing your due diligence. Maintaining clear course calendars. We're already supposed to do that. So trying to have that. It reduces anxiety for them. It helps with their planning and that kind of thing. All right. And then that consistent assignment formats. That goes back to what I was talking about with my son in Canvas, struggling with that. And it's hard for them. Okay, sorry. I made you think I was done. And then some sensory considerations. We've talked about this a little bit, but it can impact their behavior in the classroom. So with bright lights, we can't always control what the lighting is in the class, but be aware of if you're watching a video and it's dark and then you turn all the lights on, that can be difficult for students who have sensory sensitivities. It can be difficult for students who have migraines or chronic headaches to go from that light to dark, especially in classes that don't have any windows or doors. So just being aware of that, giving a heads up, you know, close your eyes for a minute, ease into it kind of thing. Loud noises, again, videos. I will be down the hall and hear Professor McIntosh down the other end of the hall blaring a video, and I feel for those students in there because it's so loud. Again, it's not always our fault. We got what we got, you know, but just being aware of that and just ask the class, is that loud enough? All the time, I'm like, are you sure y'all can hear that? Because I can't hear it. And they're like, yeah, we're good. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna trust y'all. Crowded spaces, visual overstimulation, kind of the same things, just being aware. That's probably the biggest thing, is be aware of what how you're teaching, the environment that's going on, and be aware of the students in your class. Do they look distressed? Are they putting their head down throughout the whole class and not engaging? Who's got that in their class? Everybody does. And so just being aware and watching some of those things. Yes.
Before you move on.
No, that's good.
I've noticed in my classroom, you know, I teach on the projector a lot because I'm a very visual teacher and visual learner, but when they're on the computer, they're having to go like this and look down and try to find their place and then look up and see what I'm doing on the screen. And a lot of these types of students struggle with that. So I have to slow down and try not to go too fast.
That's a really good
point. Like
point.
if we were doing an assignment where you're expecting them to look at your PowerPoint, but then also write something down, that we got to get on time to do that.
Yes, because who can guess how so many of our students take notes when there's a PowerPoint? Are they writing keywords? No, they're trying to write everything down a lot of times, right? And so I feel like a lot of times I'm teaching students how to be students because they come out of high school and they don't, that's just in general.
To help circumvent that, I always tell them before I start the PowerPoint, I want you to write down one or two things that you think are going to help you with this next assignment. And so they start thinking, oh, this is going to help me, this is not going to help me, and then I make them discuss afterwards.
Very nice. So we had a professor that said what she does to help circumvent trying to go, tell me the first part again.
So keep them from trying to just write.
For the notes, instead of trying to have them write everything, prompt them to write one or two things that they want to get out of the assignment.
That they think are going to help.
They think are going to help them with the assignment. That's a really good point, right? See, and I love it when we share tips and tricks too, because that just helps everybody as well. Okay, so where do you start with some of this? I've already said you can change little things here or there. You don't have to revamp your whole class, but you also can just start with a conversation. If you've got a student that you know, don't get a student and be like, hey, are you neurodivergent? Do you have autism? Don't do that. But if you have, and you don't have to even talk about neurodivergence or autism or ADHD or executive function because they won't know what you're talking about. You can just ask them, what helps you learn the best? Have you found anything that you feel helps you take notes better or pay attention during long lectures? Because I lecture and sometimes I see the glazing. What could I do that could help you? So even just asking them that, on what strategies did they use in high school? If they are neurodivergent, they probably had specific strategies in high school. And so if they can tell you that, that's going to help you. It also teaches them to advocate for themselves, which, woo-hoo, that's always good. And then clarify with students, especially those with sensory sensitivities or ones that you see get restless or self-stim, where they or start stimming, where they flap or rock, that they can leave for a moment, that they can give you a signal if you have a policy about going to the restroom or something. Let them just be able to give you a signal to say, I got to step out for a minute, okay? That, I'm not saying that because I think as professors you would get upset. I say that so that sometimes they won't take a break because they're afraid you're going to get upset. You know what I mean? So if they have been given permission and a sign or something, then they're not as worried about it. They don't have that stress, and it helps them to do that. Students know a lot of times what helps them, so just talk to them. All right? They might really appreciate that. All right, and why does it matter? If you're supporting neurodivergence in your classroom, it's not just those students that are going to be more successful. Your other students will be too. And it improves confidence, which is always good. We want to see that. And it improves retention and completion, which are guys like that, right? So that's always a good thing. And because I think we all hate it when we have a student we know is trying really hard and we lose them because they just can't seem to get over that hump. They just can't seem to get it together, organized, and it just becomes too much. And so we lose them. And that can be devastating for them because they just feel like they can't do anything, you know, that they're not going to be able to be successful. So, I'm a little early. So, questions? Anything anybody'd like to discuss? We need to kill a little time.
I'm taking some notes about, we do workshop Wednesdays,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm getting some ideas on some workshops that we can, bring back or do. I know Nancy does a really good, like, for example, how to take notes.
Yes.
When you read, what you need to focus on, how to study. Nancy does a good one on that. How to communicate. We kind of miss, sometimes they don't know whenever they email their instructor to say, instead they go, hey bro, blah, 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 blah. And we want, to help them be more professional. Amy's done that with us. Amy does a great job on that. And so I just want to take this time to tell faculty, first of all, there is a list of all of our workshops. If you have students that you think your students might benefit from them, encourage them to go to the workshops. But also, if you see in your class, hey, these students really need help with something, we can look at that. Because every semester, we're planning the next group of workshops, and we want it to be relevant. We want the students to be successful. And if they can't come during that time, and you have some time in your class and you want us to come there, we're happy to do that too.
That's awesome.
So that's just
well, and you can't say this, Debbie Richardson, but I can give extra credit to motivate students to go because it will motivate them to go. And those workshops are wonderful for them, and they need them. They need those tools.
And we have popcorn.
And they have popcorn. Look, our students, a lot of our students are food insecure, so that's good. But hang on, don't lose your thought. I did want to say, talking about emails, that's a way that you may see communication struggles, especially if you have online classes, is that you get probably once a week, I get an email that says, I don't understand what you mean in this assignment. That's all it says. There's no class. There's no, I got a name, but that's it. And I'm like, I need more information. And so you make it, and I'm not saying all those students are neurodiverse, but err on the side of caution, just in case, ask questions, because I get irritated sometimes, and then I have to delete. Take a breath, or I get snarky. That doesn't help the situation. But so you might get emails that are really blunt or borderline inappropriate. Now, I'm not saying take written abuse on your email, but just know that sometimes they get a thought and it gets put in an email and sent, and they're not thinking they're not going to be able to understand this. They're not thinking, well, that sounds rude. They're not thinking that way. They just have to get what they want to say on the email and send. So we see those communication struggles, unique emailing techniques quite often, and that's part of that communication. Thank you for that. No, what were you going to say, Carly?
Well, I have a question actually, because I want a little bit of clarification. I can't remember what you said. Like, I'll be telling the students instructions or whatever, like say I'm trying to get them to the tutoring center. And sometimes I see, you know, when I'm saying go to this building and that, they kind of glaze over. So then I'll write it down for them. Did you say that I'm overwhelming them by writing it down or helping them?
You're helping.
I'm helping them.
Yes.
So they can take written instructions.
Yes.
together after that.
Yes.
Process it at their own.
At their own
Nice.
pace. Okay.
Yes.
I'm going to say this from somebody who's not neurodivergent, but is an extremely visual learner.
Same.
You saying something to me?
Right.
That's always why I struggled with history and government, because 90% of the time they stood up there and talked to me, and I was like, I don't understand. And it wasn't that I couldn't process the information, that I couldn't pass the class. It was that that particular style was not cohesive with how I learned things. So by providing, and I think what you said was beautiful, by providing different styles of teaching/learning, you're appealing to more people, and you're going to hit different learning styles, because unfortunately we tend to teach the way we learn, and we kind of forget that not everybody learns the way we do.
Right. Well, and a lot of times I think we teach like how we just got out of school, which was master's level at least, right? And so, you know, a lot of our students coming out of high school just don't have those skills yet. No, they don't. Some do. I'm not going to say that as such a blanket statement, but yeah, I was going to say something else and I lost it.
I want to jump back to the email thing, because you're right, they don't think that way. And honestly, not being rude about it, but just pointing out, hey, you need to use full sentences or people will think X, Y, Z thing. And it's that they straight up didn't think about it, they didn't realize it. I have a student, and ever since I have been communicating with that student in full sentences, no more of the blah, 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 just blank, 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 but full actual sentences. And I'm like, okay, this is the student who's reaching out to me, I'm gonna reach out back. It literally was, they just didn't know.
I know Elizabeth in her online classes, because she teaches so many and she has so many students who are in multiple sections of her classes. She puts an announcement out for each class at the very beginning that says, when you email me,
This information.
please place this information in that assignment, because if you give me what class you're in, what assignment you're talking about, what question you have, then I can answer very quickly and very easily. Whereas if I have to go hunt the information, you know, it might be something where I have it on my phone, and if you have the question, I'm like, oh yeah, I can totally answer that. I'll answer it back on my phone, and you get an immediate response. But if I have to go hunt down the question, then you might not get a response until the next day.
Right.
And so by kind of at the very beginning of the semester providing that information and saying, hey guys, if you will do these things, then I can help you so much easier and faster, and who's benefit to you.
Right, exactly. When I first started working at Navarro College as an adjunct, we had to have an email etiquette page that we posted at the very beginning, and that was helpful.
I've got a question about those workshops. Are those done in Waxahachie and Midlothian?
No, we just have it on Corsicana campus right now.
So is,
But
I mean,
if
because
you have,
from one yard.
yeah, because we
Right.
don't have staff to do it on other locations, the way we do it here.
So what do we have? There.
Where are you, Waxahachie?
Well,
In Midlothian?
Waxahachie and Midlothian.
We have an opportunity to, if you have some specific need and you have students that would benefit from it, then talk to me. I didn't bring my cars today, but Deborah Richardson, email me. And we've got a staff that she wears meeting hats there. She's a Bulldog Trio,
Okay,
camera. But she's amazing, and we can bring it there. We just don't have the capability of doing all the workshops there, but absolutely. We can try that, and we can try it again, but it hasn't been successful when we first started. First of all, people didn't get on it. We had rooms set up and everything, there was no one there.
Yeah.
And we could possibly record it. I will check in on that. I will check on that. But That being said, we want to be accessible to all locations as best as we can. So if you have any,
Thank you. Thank y'all for listening to us. I do want to tell a little short story about a student I had several years ago, and it broke my heart because he was so lost. He had never been to college before. He was coming straight out of high school, and he was so lost on just, he had a full load, and it was overwhelming, and navigating campus and living away from home for the first time, which was great. It's good that he's getting out and doing these things, but it was a lot for him. And so I love that we have the mentee program and mentor program, because that's what he needed. So, and I'm actually going to give a little plug for that. Anyone who has experience with autism or neurodivergence at all, consider being a mentor for students like that, because a lot of times other people may not understand and be a little nervous about working with them. So don't ever be afraid.
they have more mentees than mentors right now. They need more mentors.
We need more mentors.
And I think I'll just plug in for Dr. Johnson. She's a mentor.
Nice.
Yes, for one of the students that we work with.
That's awesome.
And,
Can I ask something as a, would be a potential mentor,
Yes,
that you
I don't know
would
if
do a
it's
training
something.
or thing that is not during lunchtime?
okay, I'll tell her.
Right.
Because Paula's doing it, so.
Because every time you do,
I'm
I'm
back
back
it up.
12:30, I'm like, going to class, and it's like 11, well, I'm in class.
Right.
I can't, so for a lot of your instructors, if you'll do a later afternoon one, we might be more.
I'll let Paula know that, because I know that she's needing more mentors.
Yeah.
And I understand.
If you didn't hear all that, it's okay, but consider being a mentor, for sure. All right, any other questions? Comments?
I will say that coming from K through 12 and seeing it, being around it all the time, a lot of our students, I've worked in K through 12, but I see now, a lot of our students graduate from high school and want to be into college and not be that person they were. But they don't understand that that's how they learn to learn.
Yes.
And they don't understand that that's how they process information. And that's how they do this. And so a lot of our students come to you and don't want accommodations. They don't want to.
Right.
But that causes a big struggle, because that's how they learn to learn. So a lot of the time the student will come to me and we'll have conversations, and then I immediately reach out to Debbie.
So you only think you send everybody to me.
Right.
Dr. Moody.
I do all the time.
And I love it, but they will sit there and they've already been through a whole semester or maybe midterms, and they're like, well, I just want to be myself. I don't want to be that. There's a stigma attached.
There is.
And so we were working really, really hard for them to understand that it just doesn't mean you're less than, it doesn't mean anything like that. First of all, and you learn differently, and we want you to be successful. That's the whole point. Secondly, everything in the disability officer office, my office, is confidential. So your documentation doesn't go to advising, it doesn't go to the registrar. When you get that diploma, it's not going to say you had accommodations. That is, so if you have students in your class and you think, maybe, wonder why they don't have accommodation or something. Again, you don't go, hey, do you have autism?
Right.
But you can privately, discreetly say, hey, if you need some help with learning, maybe you can send them to me. And I mean, I'll take anybody and everybody. Like Dr. Moody said before, Debbie loves everyone, and I said, even Dr. Moody.
That's true. I love it. I love it. Well, and then for those that are online, I don't know how to say that. What we're talking about is that a lot of students coming out of high school don't want to be different. They don't want to be viewed different. And what I know what you experienced and what I experienced is a lot of times in school, they miss being a part of everything else. They don't always, like in elementary, they don't always get to go to recess because that's when they have intervention time. Or they don't get to do the fun day in the class where they watch a movie because they've got to go do speech therapy or something like that. And so they've gone through years sometimes where they feel different anyway, and when they come to college, it's their chance, just like every other college student, to become an adult and become their own person. So approaching them or even just discussing it with them, you want it to be with that expectation that they're not looking or wanting a handout. They may be avoiding help because they don't want to look different. They don't want to be thought of as different. And so, again, a plug for just doing it for your whole class, because that can help in some of that. But that's perfect. Thank you for saying that. Anything else? Okay. So here's my contact information, where I'm located most of the time. Please feel free to reach out if you have any questions. If you have a student that you're not quite sure what to do, I know there's sources and resources on campus, but feel free to contact me as well. I love problem solving, trying to help students be successful, so you are welcome to do that anytime. Perfect. Good times, good times. It's Friday, right? All right. Thank you.